Is the sound on? There you go.
Testing. Ready? All right.
Yes.
Good morning and welcome everyone to the special meeting of the Salt Lake City Council goal setting session for the fiscal year of 2022 to 2024 financial plan development for this Saturday, February 26, 2022. I now call the meeting to order at 10 a.m. Please take the roll.
Councilmember Clark?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante?
Here.
Councilmember Arona?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Mayor Urick?
Here. And Councilmember Arona, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I'll be glad to.
Salute your flag and pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And moving on, Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Welcome everybody to the goal setting session for the Salt Lake City Council for the financial plan development for the fiscal years 2022-24. I will kick us off with introducing the agenda for today. We will start with a presentation of objective outline and guidelines for the workshop first. If you could pull up my slides. We'll then go to an overview of the current priorities that we are working on in current year. That way you will have the connectivity between where we are today and what you would like to focus in the future. We'll then open up to the public comment.
Could we have the screen show the power slide?
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
So then we'll go to public comment. The purpose of today is really to receive public input for you for your decision making. So we have had a survey out there in the community. We also had a workshop on the 27th where we looked at the financial picture of the city, and today we're looking for public comment in terms of priorities for the next 2 years. And then after we receive public comment, then the council would turn to actually your working session, developing your goals or your priorities that you would like to see the city focus on over the next 2 years. I would like to clarify and touch base on, how does the general plan and the financial plan interact with each other, because we have a couple of surveys that have been out there. There's a lot of different processes going on, and we are asking for a lot of public input. So I'd like to first talk about the general plan. So the general plan serves as a blueprint for the future. It's a really long-range planning document for the next 20 years. It prescribes policy goals and objectives to shape and guide the physical development of the city. So through the general plan, we are talking about all the larger projects, the land use, the circulation, and also design guidelines, which are very important for the city of Salt Lake. And all of that shapes the physical development. Now, financial plan is a 2-year financial planning process. The city of Salt Lake had transitioned to a 2-year from 1-year financial process planning because that allows us to better align our operations and our capital improvement projects in order to achieve goals. So with financial plan, first we kick off by having council having the conversation with the community and setting your policy direction for us to follow. Those are your goals for the 2-year financial plan, and that's why we are here today. Underneath that, after we receive your goals today, staff will work through specifics of our recommendations, and we'll come back to you with preliminary financial plan, and then we'll talk about the specific work programs to achieve your goals. So our operating programs plus our capital improvement projects should lead us to the desired outcomes. Now, just to remind everybody that on January 27th, the council held a financial plan community workshop where you received some community input in terms of what they wanted to see and ensure made priority for this financial plan. We also had the community survey that was issued on January 20th and ran through February 14th. We received 122 responses to that survey. So we're here today on February 26th, holding a council goal setting session, which is your policy working session to where you're setting the priorities for the next 2 years once again. Now this diagram here shows the flow of financial planning. Where do we start? And it's a circular process. So every 2 years we start with this conversation with the community and between you and the community, to where you as the elected body of the city set the goals for the priorities for the city and all of the staff to work on over the next 2 years. Once you do that, staff works on the how we're going to achieve those outcomes. That's your financial plan development stage. So council and staff will conduct and hold workshop to review proposed programs. That will be your preliminary financial plan discussion. Staff will also tee up major policy goals and issues through that process, and we'll come back to you with final financial plan for adoption in June. Once the financial plan is adopted, we continue to work on those goals and of course continue to receive policy direction from council throughout those 2 years. And then once again in 2 years we reset and come back and check on the council's policy direction and what is important to achieve over the next 2 years. So some insights from other communities. Cities have two products. It's what we get delivered and how it happens. So this process here is really meant to engage and involve the stakeholders and have that back and forth conversation with the community. When you set your goals, less is more. So it's recommended that you probably state about 6 goals. That way you're really focusing us on your highest priorities that you want us to achieve over the next 2 years. Now the criteria for city goals are, they should be agreed upon by a council majority. So we would work with you once we get to that point later today in the workshop to make sure that all of the goals that you set today for us in the community will be agreed by the majority of you. They will be set forth in one document, so the financial plan will actually document those and ensure that the financial plan and work programs are aligned with those goals. They need to be clear and understandable. They need to establish as high a priority and a real commitment. So they need to be something that you truly want us to achieve over that time period. They need to reflect major goals that cannot be achieved without council support. So we are really looking for those high policy direction goals from you today. They can be translated into performance goals and objectives of employees at all levels of organization. So based on what you decide today are the priorities for the next 2 years, we will literally go through and create and establish recommendations for programs on both operating and the capital improvement program side. And that's what we'll be focusing on over the next 2 years. They need to be genuine consensus. While unanimous agreement is not required, they should be accepted to the point where resistance to them is reduced or eliminated. So they need to be agreed upon by you as the city council. So desired outcomes should be, the goals should be for the next 2 years. They should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So think about that 2-year time frame when you are discussing the goals. I'm going to stop here for a second and see if there's any questions from council at this point.
Are there any questions?
Yes, please. When you say time-bound, I understand that we want to have a goal set for a particular time, but does that mean we're going to set a specific time to each of these goals at this time? Or are we just saying within the next 2 years they have to fit into that time zone?
At this point, we want to keep it a little bit more high level and talk about the 2 years. Some of the goals may be, work on, achieve, but they may not be completed through the 2 years. There's some larger projects that will require that. So at this point, we're really talking about high policy direction, the things that you really want us to work on. When we come back to the preliminary financial plan, it will be a lot more clear for you as to how we propose to proceed over the next 2 years.
I'm also a little confused. Common state of affairs. It says the criteria for city goals that can be translated into performance goals. And I'm not sure how some of the goals that I'm thinking of can be translated into employee performance goals. If I say we want more water, that's a little tough to put in there, and that's why that one bothers me just a little bit, but that's just a point.
And I can clarify a little bit. So what we will do through the budget process is set performance for measurable outcomes for the city overall. So we want to know how effectively we are operating on a day-to-day basis. We also want to have some measurable milestones towards achieving progress towards those goals. So it's not necessarily going to be just a performance pointed to one person who may or may not bring all the water to Solvay.
Thank you.
First.
Watch out, Jose.
I know.
We're coming for you.
I see you, Mr. Infante.
All right, if you can have the slides back. So now we'll take a look and reflect on where we are with the current financial plan. I do want to give kudos to the city for the first time achieving the Distinguished Budget Award with this current financial plan. GFOA is both the United States and Canada large organization, and they focus financial plans to make sure that our finances are sustainable in the long run and are also tied to our strategic objectives. So in the current budget, there were several priorities that the city has been focusing on. The first one was to foster tourism industry and promote Solvang's unique character as travel destination. Some of the key programs within that was investment in marketing, developing a branding strategy, which we're now wrapping up. Establishment of a tourism advisory committee was something that the city council decided to do as part of this effort. And then you also have directed staff to work on a couple of larger projects, which are potential new hotels, which is the old Lockmar Hotel project and the Alisal Range expansion. Another priority in the current year was to develop Solvang's vision and guiding principles to promote desired change through planning and design. So that is what we are definitely engaging in right now with the community through the general plan update. The general plan update it's the first comprehensive general plan update for the city of Solvang, and we are working on all the elements which will shape what the Solvang looks like in terms of its physical setup, its architecture for the next 20 years. The next priority that we are currently working on was to foster economic development and support business community through COVID-19. As you would recall, this year we were truly just getting past the pandemic and the shutdowns, still experienced a lot of changes in regulations. So one of our objectives was to ensure that all of our economic engine, which is really the businesses in the city of Solvang, remained there and were supported. I'm happy to say that we came through rather well as a community for the business community. We have hardly any vacancies in our downtown, and our businesses are doing well. We're actually doing also rather well by looking at the sales tax. You can tell that we are recovering rather nicely. We are also working with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that we reach into all of the available resources for the pandemic from the federal and state government. The next priority was to ensure fiscal sustainability. So with that, we're making quite a bit of progress. We have updated the general fund fee study, and those are the fees that are charged for the general general fund and our discretionary spending. We have also updated the cost allocation, and we are currently working on utility rate study. And then we'll also be moving into looking at the impact fees, which are our development fees. The next priority was to be desired place to live. So with that, we have completely reopened our recreation programs and returned to full service after COVID-19 shutdowns when a lot of the recreation programs were not allowed. We are also actively working on investing in the Hans Christian Andersen and Solving Park. There's a couple of projects this year. There's a grant available for the Hans Christian Andersen Park. And we are working on that, which will bring lots of improvements in terms of the trails, potentially playground, and also will replace a lot of the outdated benches and other equipment that are really in need of that. For the Solvang Park, we'll be coming back to you in the near future with some suggestions on how to improve that look. We have some grass that has been used by many events, so we want to make sure that we invest in our Solvang Park, which is a very central location. We are also working on updating the housing element update. That's actually tied with the general plan update. And we are really focusing with that on affordability of housing. That is important for the community. The next priority is the multimode transportation. We have been successful in increasing the ridership for our transit, and we are also looking at different options through the circulation element for the general plan update. And finally, we have completed a large project that was funded with Measure A, that is the local sales tax for the Santa Barbara County, and have completed the pavement of Aliso Road all the way to the Aliso Ranch. The next priority is to provide community with safe and reliable water, and there are the large efforts that are in progress right now are the efforts to continue to develop and come to an agreement and have the state provide us with a permit for the River Wells project. We are also working on the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, which has been adopted and is now going into the effect, and the City of Solomon has a seat on that regionally. Happy to say that we have completed the wastewater treatment plant phase 1 upgrade. That was a $3 million project and was the most critical for the plant. So that is completed, and we are moving to work on the wastewater treatment plant phase 2 and phase 3, which will be the recycled water. The next priority is maintain authentically appealing image throughout the city. So through COVID-19, obviously there's been lots of change in terms of what our downtown looks like, as well as it's been the same for other communities. Many of the dining places have been allowed to come outside, which creates more tourists outside and more potential trash. So we have increased the trash pickup, the bathroom cleanings, and the sidewalk cleanings. That has definitely been our priority to ensure that we have safe tourism and our residents are also enjoying the clean street. The DRC has strong oversight over design guidelines, and we have also reestablished the code enforcement program where we focus a lot on downtown. The next priority has been to foster organizational effectiveness. Here we have really focused a lot this year on rebuilding staff and rebuilding programs post-COVID-19. Our revenues have bounced back and actually exceeded now the revenue from 2019 pre-pandemic. So we have restructured and have been actively refilling positions and have filled 10 positions at this time, which puts us pretty much where we were before COVID-19. We have also updated the employee handbook, invested in information technology, implemented permitting software, and updated or are updating the city websites at this time. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the survey. I hear a lot of conversations about how significant a survey is compared to the number of people we have living in Solvang. So I just wanted to put some of these statistics up and talk about it. So as of 2020 census, we have 6,126 residents in the city of Solvang. Out of those residents, 3,965 are registered voters. And in the 2020 election, 3,667 of those registered voters actually voted in the election, which is a pretty good number. Yeah, it's actually a very active participation. Now, when we talk about the survey and how telling that is of the real impact or real thoughts of the community, we received 122 surveys. That is only just a little over 3% of our population or registered voters. Yet, I would note that it is statistically significant. Actually, we had a GPAC meeting last week, and I love that one of the GPAC members pointed out, well, it's not the 6,000, but it is statistically significant. And if anybody wants to have fun and Google a calculator of what's statistically significant online, that will tell you that our sample of 122 responders is actually in about 9 years percentile of confidence interval. And most scientists work at 95%. Well, there's probably some other imperfections to where we didn't go out and make sure that we got every demographic, but it is a pretty good sample that we will be reviewing right now. So we had submitted a survey, as I mentioned, that it ran from January 20th through February 14th. And we wanted to learn a little bit about who were the responders. So we asked some questions about who they are, where they live. You will see here that actually majority of the people we engaged, almost 40%, have lived in Solvang for 20 years plus. So we have really reached into a demographic that has been here for a while. We also asked what is your age category, and you will see that most of our responders represent majority between 65 and 74 years old, and we also got a pretty good sample from the 55 to 64-year-olds. So as we continue to develop these surveys, and I must say that this is the first time the City of Solvang has done a survey for a financial plan development, we can definitely continue to outreach and make sure that we try to capture those other members of the residents who are not maybe so involved in this survey right now. So we can see that, we have very little participation between people between 18 and 34-year-olds, for example. Now we have also wanted to know who is responding and whether they have a business or work in Solvang. And you will see here that about half, a little bit more, said yes, that they have a business or work in Solvang. And then another about 40%, just a little over, said that they are just residents. And then the not applicable, I think, represents the close to 10% of those who responded to this survey who actually are not residents or business owners or in Solvang. Now, we wanted to gauge the community and understand better where the community feels that additional investment may be needed. So we asked this question. I believe the city should invest more in the following infrastructure categories, and we asked them to check all that applied. And so you will see from this diagram that from this community survey, the community felt that probably the areas where the city may want to invest more of its resources is first parking and traffic, and then that's followed by the water infrastructure. The next question, we asked responders to rate the statements, and this was to gauge the community's willingness of how they would potentially want to fund these additional investments. So the first question asks, I would support a local sales tax initiative to fund and invest in city infrastructure, including roads, utilities, public facilities, parks, and community resources. So on this one, we actually got a pretty positive response. You will see that majority are either in agreement or in strong agreement that they would actually favor something like this. The next question was to gauge community's willingness to enter into debt. Obviously, the city of Solvang could issue debt to fund some of these larger projects. The city of Solvang actually currently doesn't have any debt, which is good, but it's frankly somewhat unusual as well for a municipality. We have no debt and we have good reserves in our general fund. We don't have good reserves in water and wastewater, especially wastewater. But this gives you the kind of the sense of where people are in terms of getting into debt, and I would say that's probably more on the neutral side. The next question was about formation of a downtown business improvement district, which would be basically a tax attached to probably parcels in downtown, which would then lead to projects that would benefit those parcels. And that response was also more on the agree and strongly agree side. The next question was about parking and what kind of parking improvements the community may be interested in. So we asked about potential additional parking structures, building underground parking, placing time limits on parking, charging for parking downtown, and improving wayfinding signage. And if we look at these responses, they're pretty evenly spread, so fairly neutral. There's a little bit more on the agreement side to improve the signage and also to add additional structures. The next one was just once again to gauge an opportunity, or that it was an opportunity to once again gauge people's feelings about closure of the Copenhagen Drive. And when we asked a simple question of would you like to keep it closed, we have mostly strongly agree. But then when we ask how much and what's the willingness to invest in actual project for Copenhagen closure, we are getting more of a response of maybe with more information. I need to know more about this. So this one is, this question was to gauge people's feelings about economic development. And obviously the economy in Solvang is primarily driven or almost only driven by our tourism. So that's our local businesses and our hotels is really what derives over 60% of all of our discretionary spending. So this question is geared to capture overall sense about economic development, and I would say that this says that we are pretty much right where we need to be, maybe need to invest a little bit more. If you read through the questions that were placed in your published agenda, you will see that there's some comment that if there was a way to have some other industry that does not interfere with the existing businesses, then that might be an option to look into. This one was specifically to gauge people's opinion about specific facilities and parks, basically, your recreational opportunities and the facility that our residents and businesses may use, which is the Veterans Memorial Building. And I would say that it's obvious from this questionnaire here that the focus is on public restrooms and a need for potentially more of those, and also a desire to continue to invest in the Veterans Memorial Building. Law enforcement has been a question as the county continues to raise rates. We're consistently talking about that right now, so we wanted to gauge the public's opinion as to whether the law enforcement needs are being met in the city, and from this survey it says that yes, primarily people are fairly satisfied with the service that's being received. This question is for Public Works specifically, and it focuses on investment in infrastructure. So the first question is about making sure that we have an aesthetically pleasing downtown, where we are seeing that there is more agreement that we should probably invest more into that. Garbage pickup, neutral. We have invested more in the last year, but I think that may have paid off. Public facilities maintenance and cleaning, a little bit more desire, probably the restrooms. Road maintenance, neutral to agree. Santa Ynez Valley Transit we are satisfied with, and street cleaning we are also satisfied with. And the last question was to gauge just all programs, all functions that the city performs. So we asked, in your opinion, which function needs the most investment in the next 2 years? And here it's very clear that all of our conversations about the water and wastewater infrastructure are something that the public is in agreement with. And we also see that parking is probably the next issue that the community would like us to work on. All right, with that, I'll take any questions.
Do we have any questions?
No questions. All right. And Mayor, if you would like to open it up to public comment?
Public comment. Is there anyone in the house that has any public comment on items that are on the agenda right now? I don't have any speaker slips, so if anybody's here, but
I'm sorry, I came in late.
no, that's okay. Come on forward. Right now, it looks like you're the only one.
I think there's an
Oh,
I'll wait.
I didn't see your hand.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Scott Wentz representing Cars Are Basic. Cars Are Basic has been a county-wide organization for almost a quarter of a century now. We weigh in on issues having to do with transportation, parking, and overall sustainability. And I would like, the council has an email that I sent it, and we'd like to warn you a little bit about what's going on in South County. City of Santa Barbara is in a world of hurt right now. It shut down its main street in favor of bicycles and e-bikes. The problem is that the retail, not the bars, not the restaurants, but the retail has cratered along that section. They also have a plan to extend this along what would be considered your main drag. And this, I urge you not to do. We have seen the outcomes in the city of Carpinteria. We've seen the outcomes in the city of Santa Barbara. And the city of Goleta is getting ready to go forward with more of the same thing that has failed. You need to have circulation. You need to have open streets. You have a very small transportation grid. And so you have my letter. That's my statement. I've been asked to come up here and talk with you by residents of the city of Solvang. I was going to say Santa Barbara. The city of Solvang and our members up here. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Jim? Mr. Richardson, excuse me.
You know why I'm here. I'm a senior now, you know. Zena, I want to compliment you on your presentations. Well done. Although I have a few questions, there was never once in the presentation the word senior citizen mentioned. And we're all going to be seniors, you know. And so, especially under the heading called Desirable Place to Live, I think that seniors should be mentioned in that area specifically. And the 3% is of, you know, there's 122 respondents to the survey, and 60% or more were 55 or older. So I think that they understand and they love the city and they understand what needs to be done, as the results of the survey showed. But I'd like to remind you that there are seniors living here. About a third of our population are seniors. Many of them live alone. Many of them are women, and they need places to go. And that's why I'm advocating for the senior center. So I'd like to see that as a major goal. Is the seniors. We don't want to be known as a town for old people because we love our tourists. But I think the city could support the seniors very, what can I say, more exuberantly. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any other people wishing to speak? Oh. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Brenda Ball, and I just had a thought of thinking outside the box about parking. Since I worked for a lot of years and parked behind the round tower and behind the largest windmill in Solving, that there is parking there, and what about perhaps building a parking structure there? And I know first thing everybody faints when you say parking structure, but we could think outside the box and make the facade be an attraction to Solving and make it fit in with the other Danish architecture in town, and then also use the top of it for solar panels that could bring some benefit to Solving. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others in person that wish to speak? Seeing none, is there anyone out in Zoom that would wish to make any comments at this time?
If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
I see one hand raised. Is that?
Bonnie Jacobson,
Yes.
you're muted.
Yes.
There you are.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Jacobson. I'm president of the Friends of the Library here in Solvang, and I came to your January meeting and I just want to keep you aware of us and our small needs. You have many large needs that you need to be addressing, but what we are finding is that our goal is to provide programs for children, for adults. We also supply certain things for tourists, and it's kind of an important little part of the town. But we're finding that we're having a problem right now because Goleta wants $20,000 a year from us to help with general expenses. So operating expenses are very difficult to get money for, and that's why we're asking the city to think about it. And we're very small, but it's very big in our eyes and very important to us. So $20,000 a year for hours, for personnel, for books, for the library is what we just cannot afford, and we'd like your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
You may.
I also would like to add that, and Mr. Cussler was on the meeting, the GSA has a published plan that will now be available through the library. So that is a source for the city to see what the Groundwater Sustainability Plan is. Since it's 1,100 pages, we're going to deliver it on a CD that you'll be able to use your computer or their computer and review the Groundwater Sustainability Plan when you need or want to look at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see anyone else out on Zoom. Just bring it back here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Council, and this brings us to your workshop part of today. So just so that everybody knows, and I'd like to put up the slide one more time, please, on the screen. So everybody knows what has transpired to date with Council. The Council was provided with the community survey input. The Council also heard the comments, as I mentioned before, on January 27th, and each council member was asked to put together some suggestions for city goals and submit to me, which each council member has done. They were also asked not to discuss those goals with each other until they gathered here today. So right now we are ready to move towards council deliberations to set those goals. Once again, the high priorities for us to focus on for the next 2 years. So what I'm going to do is pull up a Word document here, which will be our working document. You also have your handouts with this information. What has been done is that all of your suggestions for the major goals have been placed into this document and sorted by subject matter. So there is no goal statement at this point. They're just your suggestions. You will see there, the first one that came through from your suggestions was the water and wastewater needs. So as you work, you probably would want to work through the paper copy that you have, will be the easiest for you, and just look through what everybody has submitted in terms of the water and wastewater infrastructure. And then as you think about it, start to formulate, what is the goal, what is it that you're looking to achieve or work towards over the next 2 years. I have suggested that we probably stay to about no more than 6 goals, maybe it's 7 at the end of the day, we'll see how the day goes. And I also suggest that we stick to the format of having about 4 priorities or bullet points, actions underneath each goal, so that we as staff and the community understand within the broader goal, what is it that you think would be helpful in terms of getting to those outcomes. So with that, if I may open the floor to council, take a few minutes probably to read through all of the comments for the water and wastewater.
I'm sure for all of you out there, this is looking like grass growing.
And up here too.
Bear with us as we go through this.
It appears, at least under the water and wastewater, that all of us had pretty consistent goals underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of little exceptions, but none of us trust that state water is going to keep coming. Even though they've said this year it'd be 15%, I'm not sure I believe them. I don't know if there's been an update to that or not. But we need to have water to keep the residents up to date. And I think every one of us said, look, secure adequate resources, a water well project, water independence, and newer upgrade storage capacity, which helps. Maintain the wastewater treatment plant with recycling, so we can use recycled water instead of potable water. So I think that's number one, right there, without a question. Every one of us seemed to say almost the same thing.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Especially just last weekend going up to see my father-in-law in Shasta. And that's where we get our state water, and looking at Lake Siskiyou and the rivers up there. I literally cannot believe how much sides I can see in those rivers. You could literally walk across from one side to the other now. It's that shallow. And that's our state water allotment for what we have down here. I had inquired about some of the people that have private wells up there, and I know that on one side of the 5, the east side of the 5, evidently all of their wells, for the most part, as far as residents, they have really great water quality. However, it's not in abundance. Where on the other side, on the west side of the 5, which is where my father-in-law is, his one well is 200 gallons a minute. And it's like, I wish we had that down here. Because the quality is not so great. It has a lot of minerals and sediment in it, but just the amount of water is amazing what they have on that side. And seeing, they're having the issue, there was very little snow on the ground, so that part is now going to be an issue going forward, because while we all saw what we had in December, and it was, kind of a historic month for snowpack up there and the Sierras, as well as rain down here, it's been bone dry pretty much ever since. And so we're kind of, the gains that we made, according to the state water drought report is the gains that we made in December since have been negated with nothing to show for any type of snow coming forward, any moisture on the ground since that time in December. So we're kind of back, maybe even behind again where we were back in December, which was looking good.
The
So,
Sierra's got a foot last week, but it's still a drop in the bucket. We really need a couple of good months.
You know, we all know we need water. My question is, how do we get it?
yeah.
I mean, really, what options do we have to get more water?
Wells.
Well, we've got one well going up on the process to get in the river. Mr. Acosta has told me that a couple of the other wells that were drilled and then left empty are being tested again to see if we can't recoup some water out of those, and I'd have to ask him for what's happening. But it's a big problem, and part of it is while we do have some water now, we need to have the reservoirs so that we can store the water that we do have and we can produce.
Maybe the state could be listening to you talking right now too. When was the last time the state built any reservoirs?
Well, they can't fill the reservoirs they have. That's what the mayor was saying.
Yeah.
The reservoirs are all empty.
Yeah.
Not empty, but they're down.
They're significantly down.
So, but we have concrete, I don't know what they are actually, concrete reservoirs. We have one up at the top of Alisal.
Correct.
Another we need to expand. We got those kind of capabilities that we need to fill. So as a goal, or underneath the water goal, I think access to water is 1, and reservoirs is 2.
You think reservoirs is more important than new wells?
No, sorry. Wells is number 1,
Okay,
reservoirs is number 2.
I'm on board with that.
To me, number 3, and that's just me speaking, is the wastewater treatment plant putting in recycled water. We can't have that in time. Actually, is the biggest problem with it. We won't get it done in the next 2 years. But the 70% of our water usage in town is irrigation. That could be done with recycled water from the wastewater treatment plant. That would save us a lot of water.
Now, is that due to agriculture or just for landscaping?
Landscaping. And that's why we have the 20% reduction, which we have to talk about at City Council Monday. But so I've looked into several things. There's a couple of cities that do a recycling on their wastewater treatment plant and actually have a facility where you can drive in with a water truck and get it filled with recycled water to go out and irrigate. So if there's local farmers that want it, construction guys that are wetting down the field so it doesn't create too much dust while they build things, all those kinds of usage, the city, they could do it that way. Our biggest problem is we've got to produce it, which is expensive, really expensive. We're gonna have to go out to Boston for that. And then you gotta get the wastewater treatment plant back to here. You can't put it in with pipelines with potable water.
Yeah, no.
So now we have to build a whole new set of pipelines. That's where it gets, to me, extremely confusing with what we do.
I think that would be the only thing I'd ever want to float a bond for, would be water movement.
Yeah. But that's my opinion on those. We'll let the rest of the people talk.
And just to clarify for the process and to answer Councilmember Thomas' question, we do have staff here available if any technical questions come up. If you have technical questions, I can call up on the appropriate staff member. But you do want to talk about these ideas kind of at a higher level today, because we will come back to you. We'll get together as staff and really work through the programs and what's possible and do the analysis and come back to you with suggestions as part of the preliminary budget development. But it's great discussion, and what I wrote down so far, if we can pull up my screen, what I got so far, let me know if I'm capturing this or not, because remember, these goals will be your council goals for us in the community to work on over the next 2 years, so we want it to be descriptive of what you would like to see. So take a look at this language and see if this captures what you're looking for.
Achieve water independence. I mean, obviously, we would love to all be able to depend on our own reservoirs and our own wells, but Are we always gonna need to have the option to purchase water because we can't depend on good rainy seasons?
I would say it would be very challenging to be completely water independent.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's something that we should strive for, but I don't know if it's something that's achievable.
But I think we can all agree it's our number one priority. I'm speaking to 3 people I've heard so far. You as well?
We need to figure out the water situation. I think we need to look at this as, strategically. We're not gonna be able to depend on just wells, we're not gonna be able to depend on just water reservoirs, and we can't count, as much as I love the idea of using recycled water, it's gonna be a long-term, expensive process. It might not solve all problems now, so I'd love to keep looking at all of these 3 options. If one of them is not working, well, then you're gonna have to get your water source elsewhere. But, let's keep several pillars that we can use to support our water usage.
So is it maybe strive for water independence, or is it improve local water supply, enhance local water supply?
It's a combination of both.
It's a combination of both,
It's
definitely.
wells
I
and,
don't know if we'll be able to do independence, but
yeah, well, as much as we can, but
As much
wells
as we
and
can.
distribution, or wells and storage are the 2 most, number 1 and number 2. Agree? Yeah. So start with that and work backwards.
Okay, am I hearing what you're saying, or am I not capturing something?
And I think for that, if we actually put the enhanced local water supply first, and then as a result of that, we're striving for water independence, because all of the enhanced water supply, our first 2 goals are that there. Access to water, reservoirs, recycled water. Other option, do we have any other options, Jose, that's, for instance, I bring Shasta up only because my father-in-law's good friends with their mayor and some other people as well, and they're having issues with LA trying to go up there directly and do what they did to the Sierras and Bishop and create a water supply so that they're bypassing the state and they're getting water directly from cities up there, localities, and bringing it and shipping it down to LA for their residents. Not saying that's a good option for us, but finding something local, maybe. I mean, we see, we don't have all.
The Owens Valley's been destroyed. Let's see, where do we go now?
But what I mean is just for wells that are already producing. I know that not even in our own EMA, the area that we have right now for our water, we only have 30 or 50 private wells that are actually part of that, but that means there's at least, or 30% of the wells that are actually accounted for. So some of those 70% that might be left, or 60% left, private wells, do they have good output where we might be able to purchase water from them bypassing ID1 or something like that?
I'll have to let this go to Mr. Acosta, but Jose and I both saw in the GSP meeting for the EMA that we already have one well showing that it's hit a critical low. So the water, even if you had the wells, may not be there for us to use. And if I remember correctly, last time we couldn't get state water, we had to go out and buy it, and the prices tripled per acre foot.
Yeah.
So we're back into finances again.
Right.
So our independence would be wonderful. But yeah, you could buy it.
Are you floating about buying it from individuals?
Yeah.
Is that even legal?
Can you do that?
Can the city do that, or municipality?
Not that I'm aware of, but then you also have to build the infrastructure to build that and pipe it into the locality. And which wells do you choose? Which ones do you prioritize? Which individuals do you approach to purchase their water, and at what price? So that's not where we should prioritize. I believe developing the wells that we have currently drilled, Zena's given us direction to seek those 2 wells, sample them, get them developed hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years, Purchase of state water, we're looking at that right now with CCWA. I do want to answer I believe it was Mr. Thomas who had the question about 15% allocation, or Mr. Infante. We did have an update with CCWA just the other day, and they're saying that DWR is reevaluating that 15% right now. Come mid-March, we'll have an update on that for the city as well. So development of the local wells that we have drilled and getting those into the system is priority, and then moving forward with the river well development would be our best option right now.
For the Riverwell project,
Yes, sir.
do we have an idea what that well is expected to produce?
The anticipated amount was gonna be about 650 gallons a minute, I believe, for those two wells.
Sounds pretty good.
Yes.
So then it would be, once those go, then it's incumbent to have a place to store it. I
Correct.
think that's where they kind of have to be in tandem.
And Zena's given us direction there too, to seek out options on enhancing Elsa Reservoir, getting that developed, and also seeking another reservoir up by Reservoir 3, which is out on the ranch as well. So we're working on that as well, seeking out cost estimates and more information on that.
So are those costs, are grant funds available on some of those to help with us for trying to do that state water? I think I forwarded you something related to that.
So yes, we are actively working on looking at grants. We are looking at engaging some grant writers. Obviously, there's firms that specialize specifically in grant writing. There's lots going on right now in the grant world. And we want to make sure that we spend our energy on the grants that are most fit for our projects. So we're actively working on that. I would say that it's probably unreasonable to think that a majority of our needs will be funded by grants.
Unreasonable.
Unreasonable, unfortunately.
Maybe we can still do the federal ones too.
Any further questions?
That's all we have. Thanks, Jose.
Thank you.
And you have 400 plus cities, municipalities in California doing the same thing right now
I
too.
know.
Yeah.
It's get in line.
Yeah. And right now, unfortunately, it feels like we're all getting in line behind LA and Orange County.
Part of the issue that Mr. Costa brought up about getting a pipeline from a personal well, there's a couple of major agricultural users that have been buying all the water they can and storing it in their own private reservoirs. And they have the connection to the pipelines, and they'll sell it to you, but it's gonna cost. So, anyway, moving right along.
Not an option.
Yeah, that's why we want it.
There have been a couple of property owners who have wells who have approached the city, but it will definitely be not the cheapest water. So if anything we produce agrees at our cost, that would come with a premium.
So at this point, the purchases from ID1, while they're not cheap, they're still our most cost effective right now.
We try not to purchase water from ID1, that's kind of a really emergency supply.
Right.
But because this year's allocation was really low again, we will be coming to you with a proposal and ask for purchase of additional water. So between last year and this year, to really meet the needs of our water supply, we will spend about $1 million in the purchased water, it's about $1 million to construct a well. So the faster we can move forward with that, the less we can spend in purchased water.
All right.
What's $1 million divided by 6,900?
Your water bill.
Yep.
Okay,
The
so
last element on this then, we need to put in here, I believe, is you've got wastewater under this same category, right?
I had them grouped under the same category because some of you have submitted them as a combined category.
But that wastewater treatment plant is already in the process of being upgraded, it's going through it. Do we set that up still as a priority?
I think it's very important for you to indicate if that's your direction to continue with that. As you know, the wastewater fund there's no funds in the wastewater fund. So through that discussion, we have had some conversations about the timing and when we would be able to actually move forward with that project, just because there's the option of,
Using general fund.
correct.
Then I
So-
personally would like to suggest we put that as one of the elements under this as a priority.
Okay, if you would like to look at this, so this would be goal number 1, and as you go through, you can always change the priority and the ranking of the goals, but this definitely had most of your focus. It would be to enhance local water supply and strive for water independence, and the bullets under that would be access to water, which is develop new wells, reservoirs expansion, recycled water options, and wastewater treatment plant upgrade.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, if we did the bullet points, recycled water should go under wastewater, because that's where we're gonna be producing it from, correct?
Yeah. That does come from the wastewater treatment plant. So, what you're thinking of is that's part of that fourth bullet.
Yeah, or we move waste, yeah.
There you go. That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, if council is happy with this goal, we can move to the next area that seemed to have the most interest, and I have parked them or combined them together, which is the parking and traffic area. There was quite a bit of discussion there. So for the benefit of the public, anybody on Zoom who can't see it, I'll just kind of run through it really briefly. There's areas of parking improvements, which include 2-story structures, additional parking in downtown, improving the wayfinding, working on leases for off-site, basically public-private partnership, utilizing permit parking for residents. Business owner staff needs to park outside of the TRC. Consideration of underground structures. Opening of Copenhagen, additional bike lanes. Improving circulation. Improving congestion on Highway 246. Some more biking again. Another comment about 246, synchronization and pedestrian crossings improvements. Fjord expansion planning, underground parking structures. And once again, sync lights and improvements for Mission Drive 246. So seems like lots of common themes here.
One of the thoughts I had going along with, because I know parking was an issue for me, and what I'd seen in all the years of working as the community resource deputy, but I liked Brenda's suggestion about possibly solar panels or something on top. But then on the other hand, I look at parking lot 2, which is the one behind Solvang Park, and if we had an underground there, we could get 2 levels there, one underground and one where the level is right now with parking. Add the second level or first level on it, and instead of it be parking, have it be an addition to the park. So it could be an area that is a place where people would gather, as opposed to actually it being a parking lot. So it could be an area above that, you know, is like for recreation or an open seating area. It could be an area where it could be a stage that there's plays put on outdoor or little concerts or other venues there. So the second level wouldn't actually be a parking lot. It could be covered in vines similar to what you have down further at Lansby right now. And you wouldn't really notice it other than it would just be something that's kind of grown out of the ground. And it wouldn't actually have to be that tall. It would just have type of more of a parapet style walls on it. So it'd be short walls. You could stand up, you could sit down and actually look down onto Copenhagen Drive or onto Mission Drive. And, you know, whether it's covered in grass or just tiled like, you know, a promenade or something, just something a little bit different than a parking lot. But you could use the size that you have now on the ground level and then one underground below that to get 2 levels of parking and still have an additional open space to be able to provide because I'm gonna just go on record as saying I'm not in favor of having Copenhagen Drive closed, and the reason is because there's no other place for us to circulate to go around. That is the bypass, and all of that creates all of the additional traffic in the residents on the north and the south side. I know it's going against what the majority of the people that voted in our survey said, but from what I see, I'm just putting it out there. I would love to see something, and that's why I'm suggesting instead of a parking structure that's for parking, that could be an additional whole open area above it, above the parking spot, and keep the parking down at least ground level or below. And it just would provide the open space that we're looking for people to congregate and go without cars up there and still being able to accommodate some cars. But in addition to that, we have other areas. Whenever we had large events, we always identified areas, and it was my job to identify all the parking areas that were available in the valley so that people, when these large events such as Amgen would come into town, what would we do? We couldn't have them parking downtown because we didn't have any place to park downtown. So we provided parking out you know, some of them went as far as Buellton, but we also went out to the high school. On the weekends, the high school is available to utilize just like we do Solvang School. We had lot 72 down here where we were able to probably get 400 cars every day if we just opened up that bottom part that we utilized as it is now, without doing anything to it short of just making it a little bit more presentable and better for walking. I know a long time back we had discussed putting some DG down, which still makes it more, it's not a hard pavement, but it's just something that looks a little bit more in uniform with the ground that's already there, because I know there doesn't really want to be anything else, but without putting, you know, asphalt or concrete mediums and stuff like that, just have it be DG. And if we had shuttle service to the high school, and then on the west end for people coming into town, down there by Buell Flat Rock, you know, even if there was 25 or 35, 40 spaces that we could add in addition to our needs that we have in downtown, it could, you know, and if we do the wayfinding like we are anticipating, we would be advertising that there's parking in town, free shuttle service to get into Solvang downtown, and it's a walking. You could walk up the hill, or you could, you know, not that we're encouraging that, especially from the west end, but they could ride their bikes there. That's what we did when we had not just Amgen, but when we would bring in the Solvang Century, and people are parking way down, and then they'd ride their bikes into town. In some ways it creates less traffic. I wish bike riders would ride and respect the cars a little bit that would go through, but hey, it is what it is.
Do you remember though too, during Amgen, they parked at the bottom of where there's 2 big lots at the bottom of Alisol as well?
Right.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is just personal, but I don't consider, I've never considered Copenhagen as a throughway. it's a place where you go to that place to park. It's just personal opinion.
Right.
I get what you're saying, but I don't think that having Copenhagen open, because it is so crowded, I think residents will always stay off of it. I mean, you may be going to a specific store, but I never thought of it as a road to go through town, because it's a stop, start, stop, start, stop, start.
That's true.
It is, it's always really,
But
it's always really crowded.
a lot of the and it was only 2 or 3 times during the day.
Mhm.
So during the morning or the afternoon, it was usually during school. So a lot of the high school
That's a good point.
students
Yeah, you're right.
would utilize it, go down to Copenhagen off of Fifth,
Mhm.
and then blast through. Just ask Aaron Peterson how many times we'd have to sit there on Copenhagen, because there was no stop sign from Fifth Street all the way to Atterdag. And so they would blast, I mean, think about it, no stop signs.
Mhm.
You come all the way through and you make the little S right to Atterdag, and then from there you only have one more stop sign at First,
Yeah.
and then you can head back to
It's
First.
not a stop sign by Peasant Feast?
Yeah, that was the
Okay,
one
from
stop
there, yeah,
sign
yeah.
from there all the way to Fifth Street.
I think kind of what we have to remember too is that this last year, as far as vehicle traffic goes, it's the most we're ever going to see in this town.
True.
Because once, and we've talked about this before, that once the COVID, things get back to normal, people start traveling, I think we will see a dip. So I think that when we deal with traffic, I think our apex is now. So this is as crowded as it's going to get. We can't build up, we can't build out, we can build up. I just don't see in a town of 6,000 people how many more residents you could add and how that would impact traffic. I think the kicker is we don't know what Buellton's doing, because we are that hourglass that Aaron was talking about the other night. When I was on the planning commission, we discussed this, that we don't know what the Chumash are going to do in the future, we don't know what San Ynez is going to do in the future, we don't know what Buellton's going to do in the future, but everything they do affects us. And we've tried to have some communication, and it's really gone nowhere. So, I mean, they can do all they want, they could double the size of Buellton and we'd have no say in it, but it sure would affect us. So that, I think, is the caveat here when we talk about traffic, is what's gonna happen around us versus what happens in Solvang. That's my opinion.
The other part of this, and it's one of the discussions in the GPAC meetings, is that we have to meet arena guideline goal, 191 more residents.
Correct.
We have enough in the planning process right now to cover 50% of that or something, I think it is. But not everything. So one of the ideas that had come up from the consultants that I've kind of picked up on is, what if we did a double deck on parking lot 4, which has one street at this level and the end of Atterdag is over at this level. So we'd only have to go down a half a story to get 2 stories out of that,
I've liked that idea for years.
put a third one on top of it and build apartments.
That's the one at the bottom of Atterdag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that would be the ideal location for, I forget too that Lansby does have basically, I don't know if that's underground, it is covered parking.
It's covered.
Yeah.
Would you consider that subterranean parking at Lansby? No.
No.
But the same concept.
Yeah.
Do we have any
Because
other,
it's higher
Yeah,
on
correct.
Mission than it is on Fourth.
is there any other covered parking? And I forgot about that. Is there any other covered parking in Solvang?
Not to my knowledge.
Not in the downtown area, maybe over by all
Oh,
of the
yeah,
buildings,
by-
by where,
the
yeah,
medical-
Bill,
medical office, sorry,
yeah.
But that concept that Mark's talking about, that's the same concept you could do.
Because it
for
does
that
slope down.
Parking lot 4.
Straight and then
With
underneath.
the elevation.
I would be so on board with that if we had the money to do it. And if we want to make it a priority, then that's what we do.
Well, parking is a big priority, I think, from everybody. We saw that we all agree, we
Mhm.
saw that in the survey. How we get it is difficult. And the mayor's suggestion is one, and this suggestion is another, but both of them are going to be expensive. We are going to need a contractor. If we want to put apartments on top, we don't want to run apartments, that's not a city function. We need to get a contractor that's willing to take that on and handle that property.
It could be part of a project that might be, that's where low-cost housing goes. And so then there's grants and or things that are available if you partner with county housing to maybe do something like that there. So
That's-
then-
You're hitting on something there.
Yeah.
So you're housing on top of a parking, it's already a dense area, and take it up.
Well, it also allows people that work in the city,
Right.
who haven't in the past or currently live in the city, can live here now, and that reduces the traffic. It reduces the parking problem, because they gotta park underneath where they live, it's in that structure. there's a lot of advantages to it, but there is, to me, I'm ignorant of what it takes to get a contractor in and get that built, and who runs it, and what does the city have, because it's city property, how all that relationship works. There are ways to do
Can
it.
somebody talk to Mr. St. George about that? He's got experience with that in Isla Vista.
Probably would, I have not spoken to him about that. But there's, okay, so that, anyway, that's,
I like that idea very, very much.
glad to hear it.
I think in the short term, it could be something though, without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do something where we're just leasing some extra properties. Because I know, like where Brenda's talking about, city doesn't own that. That's not city, that's the families that own that. So that's a private parking lot. So,
Is that accurate? Like on the maps?
among others, yeah.
Okay.
There's multiple families there, but, you know, getting something down, you know, maybe leasing some space out at the high school, offering shuttle service from there to back into Solvang. We could do some other stuff short-term, just some grading to cover up all the pothole, or the squirrel holes that are out on lot 72, and do the same thing right there. And that right there is an immediate answer for a lot of parking in a very minimal amount of money. I think, but
I don't think we have control over that. Did we give that right to
Well,
the Historical Society?
we do and we don't. We have, I know that there are some things that the city has grandfathered in place where we're allowed to utilize it for large events, but I would imagine that if we were able to talk with them and just,
Maybe.
you know, it's a shot.
Strike a deal.
The worst that can happen is they say no, but
Yeah.
if we don't ask, we won't know.
Good point.
But at least it's immediate parking right in downtown Solvang that we have some control over, because it is the area that the city was responsible for whenever we had large events. And it did provide a lot of parking right away.
Okay. Thank you, Council. If we could pull up what I got so far from this discussion. I think the discussion really kind of focused more on parking here than the traffic, so you might consider if you want to do something separate for traffic, but right now I captured develop additional parking with focus on underground parking. Underneath that, we're up to, 5 priorities. Consider parking lot 2, restructure to expand Solvang Park, develop options for underground parking, including parking lot 4, seek out mixed-use developments, live, work in the same place through public-private partnerships, lot 72 improvements, and options for lease of private parking lots for public use.
That's a lot.
And none of it includes some of the other comments in here about improving the biking infrastructure, putting bicycle lanes or bicycle racks. None of it has anything to do with wayfinding signs, which were all recommended by many of us, it appears.
So would you like to add another goal for traffic?
Yeah, because I think some of that stuff, especially if we're providing different parking or some other parking, that's the wayfinding signs, that's what we're trying to do for that. I'd like to see more sidewalks and the projects that we have finished, like going up on the north side of Alisal, to be able to walk up all the way to the top of Alisal Hill from Mission on a sidewalk, as opposed to part of it, you're out in the street.
Do you remember, Mr. Mayor, 2 years ago, we were halfway there and one homeowner put a wrench in the whole thing?
Yep.
Well, I can't walk that hill anyway.
Is this the area where we discussed Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's part of the traffic circulation, which is still also part of our general plan, trying to figure out what to do there.
On Copenhagen, do we have an idea of the costs that if we wanted to keep it closed and do it right, how much money we're talking about?
So yes, that item is actually on your Monday agenda in just a couple of days. So to do it really right, it's over $3 million. There is an option, actually, I would ask Roger to come up and give us those costs and maybe also touch base, go back a little bit and give us a little bit of discussion of how, just to set expectations on what we come back with a preliminary plan, how much money
we
we
want to do this now, or we want to wait and do it Monday?
You can get a little bit of discussion now, but on parking lot 4 and parking lot 2, maybe just touch a little bit on how much it would cost to dig under in a straight area versus utilizing the land and that's under parking lot 4, and then also give us some costs on Copenhagen Drive.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
I haven't looked into cost estimates for actually building a parking structure, but I do know that it is, from what I've seen, I remember seeing something around to the tune of $75,000 to $100,000 per space. It's a very expensive undertaking. You're looking at, you're building a structure to have cars not just park, but they got to move around and they might bump into things and stuff like that. So you got to build your structure really strong. It's usually pre-stressed concrete, very large members. If you go to any parking structure, you can see the concrete is massive, and it's also they've done some unique things in the steel to make sure that, even to get them a little smaller to for what they're accomplishing. So it is a multi-story parking structure is going to be a very expensive undertaking. I can certainly pursue some numbers though, so that we can have at least some talking points as far as to discuss, and then you're looking at paying someone to maintain and operate that parking structure as well. I'm sure we would probably charge for the parking in the parking structure, and then are we charging for other parking throughout town? That's another thing we have to discuss and implement the program. So as far as resurfacing lot 72, you're talking about maybe like a class 2 base or something like that that's drivable. That would be much less expensive. We'd have to take a look at environmentally what we can do there. I understand there's some issues there with the property.
Yeah,
So we'd have to look into that.
I think mainly more with the lease that's there with the trust.
Okay.
So that's probably the first thing, because there are some clear guidelines that were written regarding the use of the city for it, because we weren't giving that part up to be able to have that for a parking lot.
Okay.
But which is why I think the whole time when Matt and I had discussed it before, was always going to be a DG, which was something more natural,
Yeah.
as opposed to anything that's concrete and asphalt.
Yep.
So
that would be certainly a less costly endeavor. And then trying to find resurfacing of other parking lots. I mean, that's something that the parking lots are there. We do have to maintain them. So it's due.
Yeah.
For some of the asphalt is in need of some resurfacing as well right now.
So the question of Copenhagen Drive, that is up for specific discussion on Monday, so that would be the time to really work through that. But Roger, if you want to just give us the cost estimates that you developed for the Monday.
Sure. So if we looked at it, we took a 3-tier approach. So if we just do very minimal improvements and kind of polish this, polish it up a little bit, polish the sneaker, so to speak, although we don't have a sneaker out there. But we could do it for 100,000 or so, and really enhance it, and then encourage the businesses, because we'll promise them it's going to stay close, and encourage them to do their parklets and do some of their own improvements. So that'd be a private, some private investment there. In order to do kind of the second tier, which is what was discussed, widening the sidewalks out to take the existing parking in a kind of a paver scenario. In order to do that, we would resurface the roadway. Probably have to dig it down a little bit, because just to make sure things stay kind of ADA compliant. We're looking at somewhere around 1.3 million to, if we want to go brick pavers the entire width, we're looking at about 1.6. And then if we just go the full redevelopment, replace all the sidewalk that's out there and just make everything new, work on do some work on lot 2, connect it, adjust the entrance to lot 2 to, a little further towards Second Street, kind of take a little bit more space there. That way, kind of make the visitor center kind of focus. There's a lot of different options that kind of look at, but for the full thing, you're looking at about 3.5 million. But that all depends on, hey, we want an epic fountain that has all kinds of, okay, that just added up a little bit more. So it really is dependent on what we really want, but in order to do a full redevelopment, you're looking at about 3.5.
Thank you, Roger.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what I have on the screen, again, if you could take a look. I started to take notes. On the discussion regarding traffic and circulation. So down, improve circulation and develop multimodal transportation options, add sidewalks, develop bike lanes, improvements to Route 246 Mission Drive.
One thing, just so everyone understands who's here and out there, that anything on Mission Drive, because that's a state highway, is gonna involve Caltrans. So it does limit some of the options. We might be able to work with them on certain things that we would like to see happen, but everything that's gonna happen there will be going through probably SPCAG as well as us and Caltrans for sure.
Does that include the pedestrian activated crosswalk between the park and subway?
Yes.
Yes.
Even though I think the city paid for that,
The city, I believe, paid for that.
it still had to have the encroachment permit to be installed.
I'm not saying install,
Yeah.
get rid of it.
Well, that's another way, that's another one of the things that we're probably looking at with the circulation plan. How many pedestrian crosswalks do we really need on Mission Drive? And if we do, like one of those suggestions had been the scramble, that might be a better way to accommodate pedestrians at every intersection that has the lights right now, so that there's never any vehicles going at the same time as pedestrians. That's the whole purpose of all of those they have X, and so you can cross when the light goes. Pedestrians are gonna go all different directions, so cars are all stopped, and then pedestrians stay, and then cars go all the different modes as well, and it is a lot that's used in Europe. So,
In Northern California as well.
yeah. Go ahead, Jim, come forward.
I believe the last traffic study done on Mission Drive happened, I think it was in 2015, 2016, in that time frame. We considered, I think it was 4 different scenarios to process through Mission Drive. The interesting thing about that survey was on the last page. And it was part of talked about how fast the traffic will move through the city based on any one of those 4 scenarios. And none of the scenarios allowed 25 miles an hour. They were between 21 to 23 miles an hour was the fastest that the traffic would flow through this Mission Drive. So if you're going to make changes, consider that portion, how much money you're going to spend for bicycle lanes, or maybe you've seen the study, it's had those 4 scenarios, it's pretty interesting. But consider the cost versus how fast the traffic is going to move. It's my own opinion that nothing we're going to do to Mission Drive is going to make everybody happy. The only thing that will accomplish what we really want is a bypass. And there's been several suggestions, and 2 of them, one I dreamt up myself, one Chuck Stacy dreamt up, and that was a tunnel underneath Mission Drive. The other possibility would be a viaduct in the river with a couple of off-ramps running from 101 to 154. Now, of course, that's something that's going to be very expensive, but it'll be a solution, I think, and it'll be a better solution than going down Alisal to Fjord and Fjord over to the 246. So anyhow, so when you consider changes to Mission Drive, consider the throughput speed and how much you're going to spend to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're saying spend $1 million to increase the speed by 1.5 miles an hour?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest problem we have is still pedestrians step off the curb right in the middle of traffic, even in the middle of the block. We deal with pedestrians. It doesn't matter if you have the little stoplights or not.
Yeah, I'm
Look
not
at
sure,
right across
just
from Ace
because
down
you
First
build
Street.
it, they're gonna use it.
Yeah, it's nuts. I'm sorry, Tracy wants to talk, I think.
Oh, Tracy, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Tracy Beard, and I'm here today as a private citizen, I'm going to say. And one of the biggest things I ask you before you think about a bypass, I lived in Amador County for 3 years, and Amador County is where Sutter Creek was, where it was one of the biggest tourist places where they discovered gold. They put a Route 49 bypass in, and I ask you to call what Sutter Creek looks like now from their tourism committee, Dry Town looks like. And those towns have greatly suffered over the years of the Route 49 bypass. So I do ask you to talk to some of the people that are of, I'll say, your age level from 60 to 70 of when they lived there, as opposed to they had to put, they call brown signs in to get people and tourists to come back into town again. Yes, they've built a beautiful casino there in Jackson, which has brought tourism in on the other end, but Sutter Creek used to be a fabulous town like we were in the 1980s when I lived there from 80 to 83. And I do ask you to think about that as you look of what their tourist has done. And they were a fabulous tourist town prior to their bypass. The other thing is on the way signs, the chamber very much on the chamber side, we're going to support that. We need to have these. We also need to have QR codes at every corner, so as they change, Lexington, Kentucky has them. I've talked to you guys about it before. I was there this last summer. Every single corner you went on, I knew exactly where the restaurant was. I knew the name of the bar. I knew the name of the tasting room. I knew the name of the shops ahead. We owe that to our business community, and that is something on an economic level we really truly need to look at. It would not cost a lot. And I think that could fall under some tourism money that could be separated out, but that is a truly thing that we do need to have. When we spend all this money to bring tourists, we need to help the tourists shop and buy. And that is real economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Back to the wayside. I think that's a great idea.
Mayor, if I may suggest, because 2 people spoke, if you would officially reopen public comment and saving videos.
I'll officially reopen public comment. Thank you. We are here for, I guess, I just feel anybody that's a workshop, and, you know, we need to have as much input as possible. Mr. Wentz.
I'll speak as a private citizen. It's a not too hidden secret in the city of Santa Barbara, where they put pavers in, that they pay out almost monthly on lawsuits. My mother was walking on one of the pavers in front of the Masonic Center, and if I hadn't been walking next to her, she tripped on one of those pavers, went down. If I hadn't stopped her head from hitting the ground, she would be dead. It's something for you to think about, because the pavers are dangerous for people that have vestibular problems, age problems, whatever. So before you go into this issue of pavers, I strongly suggest you look at the liability issue.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Tracy a question just real quick. As far as the way signs that you're talking about for the QR codes, is that doesn't need to be electrified at all, correct? It could just be on some type of post or something?
The ones we saw were on posts, that I saw were on posts. They were not electrified. They were on posts, but you knew exactly. We say shops, we have more retail. We need to actually have the names. We owe that to our business community and our little nooks and crannies around Checo's, around where Alisal is. Our businesses suffer there greatly, and we have cute, great businesses. We have dancing every third Wednesday of the month at the corner of Alisal and Copenhagen, but those businesses are so hidden. Where Mr. Peterson's businesses, we have a very hidden area of people don't even know what's there to cross the street. We need to force people to move. On the west end of town, we've neglected that very greatly. So it's really to put more signage up and to say exactly who we are and what we are here in town.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good idea.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
I think that was one of mine, and he was way signing, I'm not sure.
I think that was one of mine.
Well, we all had some.
I just wanted to make sure that it didn't require any power.
Oh, yeah.
A lot different when it
Well,
does.
I believe the council's already put them up in some of the windows of some of the businesses so that
Yeah.
you can get to them right away, which is really cool.
So, Council, if we could go back to the,
Yes. Put that back up.
so this is what I have now. So you have your parking here, and this is forming to be goal number 3. Any changes?
We need the way signing in there.
Yeah,
I think that's just something we have to have.
that might be the first one up there, because that probably almost would be the simplest one too.
It would, you're absolutely right, the cheapest anyway.
And it could really benefit a lot of the businesses.
But that's something we really, and pedestrian, yeah, excellent.
There's no end in pedestrian in the middle.
Oops.
There we go.
I like that.
Here we are. We added some way signing. I was asking about the way signs and if it required electricity. So they,
For the QR.
the QR codes and none of that does, so we wanted to make sure we added that in there at the bottom. Although it might be one of the first ones that accommodated, so.
And one of the comments in here was to synchronize the traffic lights with pedestrian scramble crosswalks. And again, because pedestrians have a tendency to want to stand out in the middle of the street and take pictures, walk across, all those things that they do. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Mr. Olson only, but Matt had told me years ago that all of our traffic lights are synced. But you couldn't tell that because you can't go fast enough to get through the synchronization, and there's always somebody that wants to walk out in front.
Right.
So, nice idea, but I don't know if we ever accomplish it.
Well, because we also have the pedestrians crossings that are not lighted.
Yeah, I know, they just walk out.
So, can't live with, can't live without. I know we went the inexpensive way with the flashing light, but if we ever did consider that, I think it'd be incumbent on us to actually have the ones where when you push the button, it's just a green light, so that it doesn't immediately stop traffic. That's how you can sync a pedestrian-only cross with lights. Because if you go downtown Santa Barbara, they have pretty much every single one of the, not saying that's the best model, but it's the model that I'm familiar with, where you push the light, you don't automatically get a green light to go out and walk in front of traffic. So it doesn't necessarily stop the traffic going through. It gives vehicles still the opportunity to give movement to them. And then, for 25 seconds, it lets the pedestrians cross and then puts a red light on so that you know that they can or can't go. And I think synchronization, to me, if we're going to continue to have pedestrian crosswalks, maybe not the one in front of Subway, but down on 4th and the one at the park, that we would be better served for traffic circulation and for pedestrian safety to provide something that's like that as opposed to just, especially the ones at Atterdag, or not at Atterdag, at Fourth Place and the park where they're just walking out in front of traffic. And that's not safe for anybody. And that's where we seem to have our accidents when we do have a vehicle involving pedestrians, are either at the park or down at Fourth Place. And those are the only two that don't have the light on it that comes lit up. I think if we look at the statistics, not that we have a lot there, but when we do have one, that's the two locations that we have them on Mission Drive. To me, it makes sense for safety to have those lit and not just lit like we, even if they're, maybe do the crosswalk like they now have in Goleta, where it's under, part of the street as well that lights up. But when we do it, it needs to be where the light can be synced to the traffic lights, part of it. Anyway, that's one of my thoughts.
Okay, so this is what I have as your final thoughts here. Add sidewalks, develop bike lanes, improvements to Route 46, Mission Drive, including synchronized pedestrian crossings and traffic lights, re-signing for traffic and pedestrians. Does this capture
everyone?
All right, let's move on to the next area of priorities, looking through your suggestions. And that is, the next one seemed to be fiscal sustainability. We had a few comments here, which focused on potential increases to sales tax and TOT, keeping utility rates low, and decreasing expenditures, building up reserves.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We've just opened the can of worms. Well, I'll go first. I'd like to see the sales tax increase of 1%. I know it's not gonna be very popular, but it will affect everyone and not just be limited. It will also give us, I guess for me, the most bang for the buck. By taking that out for everyone, as opposed to just a TOT increase, it seems to be it's about 4 times more than we would get with a TOT increase of 1%.
Correct.
Or 3.5 times, somewhere in that
About
ballpark.
4 times.
And that would really help to give us, we could even, if we do that, we could specify some of that would be going for our reserves or building up the fund that we need for wastewater and our water specifically, as opposed to just operating our general fund, because I think those are things that all of us, whether we're a business or residents, we need to have that. And
Do we have a projection of how much money that would be?
1% of sales tax is, I've been thrown out number of 1.4 million. This year it's 1.6 plus.
Depends on, obviously, how many tourists there are, what the sales are. The other thing about that is, if I recall, on the survey that we asked of the residents, there was an agreement that was a good idea. So if we look back.
I think if we raise it with a specific purpose, say, this is gonna be for the development of our infrastructure, or to make parking easier, or, for a development that is gonna benefit all of us, then I would be on board of it. I would not be in support of raising 1% sales tax just for the sake of increasing our reserves. I would hate to see locals not supporting businesses or going, traveling somewhere else to try to avoid that. We need to make sure that we encourage them to shop locally. But if we go out and say, this is the specific thing that we're trying to achieve by raising 1%, are you on board with it? Then I think everybody would be more likely to support it.
On page 25 of the previous presentation, on the survey, the comment was, I would support a local tax initiative to fund and invest in the city infrastructure, including roads, utilities, public facilities, parks, and community resources. Strongly agree, and agree is 55% of the people said that. And then there's about 17% that are neutral, so very few disagree with that idea. So the population seems to be supportive of that tax increase.
Yeah, well, that's about 60 respondents of the whole population. I'm just saying that you have to amplify that message if you're gonna do it, because most people are not gonna know that.
There was 119 people who responded to that.
Yes, so, and we have about, what, 60% of that?
Yeah, let's see, we got 20, about 56% were agree or strongly agree, and another 12% that were neutral, didn't care one way or the other. So the people that disagreed, about 27%.
Yeah, I'm just saying that if we're gonna do it, you need to let everybody know that it's for a specific reason. Obviously, the people that are taking the time to answer these surveys are civically engaged and they, understand that we're talking about. Most people are not involved, so if you're gonna do it, we need to say why and be
If
clear
we're
about
gonna do
it.
it, they're gonna have to vote on it. So
And
they
that's-
have a chance to say yes or no.
That's the bottom line, and if I could add, the only way I would support any raising of any taxes would be something specific.
Right.
If the voters knew, and what you just said was part of my notes, I had the same sentiments, is it would have to be sold to the voters before the vote, or to make your case to the voters, and the only way I would support any sort of, any tax increases would be for specific investments, not just for the general fund.
Right.
Or for the children, or for fire and safety, and that's too specific, but, whenever the state wants to raise taxes, it's always to save babies or to keep people from dying, and I hate that. But if you're gonna talk to the voters of Solvang and say, we wanna do this, would you support this? Then I would be behind that if the residents were on board.
I agree with that.
Okay. So I have so far, and that probably would be the bullet point, not the goal, but to increase, work on increase the sales tax by 1% for infrastructure. Once again, you have an item on this on Monday agenda. So through this process, tax increase definitely requires voter approval. So we will be, if that is the direction you take, we'll continue to work on development of the language for that. You'll have an opportunity to review that and approve, discuss how that is structured going forward.
Can I ask you more question?
Yes.
You mentioned that it's unusual for municipalities and cities to not have any debt from bond issues for specific projects. I forget that was one of the questions about debt,
Right.
bond issues, correct?
Same
Also
page.
25?
Same page, 25, it's the second section of that. I would
Okay,
support
yeah.
increasing funding.
So 40, well, neutral and on up, you're looking at 60, 70%, so
Right.
I don't know, is that something, how do we get that information where, hey, residents, do you want this poison or this poison? Which do you prefer? What's the best way to finance this stuff?
And I would ask, also, on the D bid, that was almost 80% that were at least agreeable or neutral and strongly, or the agree was 52%, it was 83% that were in the agreements of that for a D bid. Would that be something, Tracy, that you think might be a D bid in addition to a 1%, or one or the other? Sorry, I'm opening it back up for public comment.
It's okay.
Right now, the chamber has no position on it. We're having a meeting with Zena next month, so right now we've had conversations
Okay.
and we have no position on it at this time.
Thank you.
The entire Owens Valley Aqueduct in 1906 was a $22 million bond that the city of LA put out.
I would say on the option for the debt, there is a cost with that, so usually you want to issue debt just to speed up the process and be able to fund large investments, whereas your increase in taxes is you've
Not a cost.
fully received the revenue and you can apply it towards paying for some of that debt issuance. So they could go hand in hand.
Well, that's an interesting idea.
You want to do both?
Well, if you've got we raised the 1% sales tax, the primary purpose is to pay back bonds. And then we
Can I pay off my Amex with my Visa card?
Yeah. Jim wants to say something.
Sorry, Jim, go right ahead.
The idea of a tax increase seems to be okay if the funds are allocated reasonably well. But the thing that strikes me that I remember mostly was our CalPERS debt. And you know how it expands and how it gets really bad, but you can't sell that as a reason for a tax increase. So you're going to have to allocate, if you have the tax increase, allocate some of the monies in areas that would have normally been spent that could be reallocated to CalPERS debt and also to the wastewater debt. You know, those two things are important. And I think that a debt-free city is a wonderful place to live, and I'm really opposed to increasing more debt. You know, so it's but at least if you're going to have a tax increase, consider allocating or funding the CalPERS debt with it, because nobody likes to hear about paying for retirement for taxes, but it's a
reality.
It's a fact of life.
Absolutely.
You know, we have to pay for it. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think also.
Oh, we had one, is that Bonnie?
Bonnie?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
One of the things that they mentioned on the sales tax proposal was that it would be to fund infrastructure to include public facilities, and I'm thinking this is a way for the senior center, this is a way for the library, this is a way for being able to spend on those areas that are small in comparison to water issues or parking or those sorts of things. So it gives you a way to find the money to fund some of these smaller projects.
Thank you. I think we have that agreement up here, at least with a few, because that was my first thought was for the library, for the senior center, and even possibly to help out with the Theater Fest a little bit, Festival Theater. So
Can I add something for Bonnie as well? Bonnie, this is Robert Clark. One of my number one goal, even though they're of equal importance, I had put down expansion of the library and more funds to the library, whether that be a capital improvement program or through city funds or whatever. But I think that as any good city, your library is one of your number one assets, and it reflects the city. So that's one of the things that I want to try and work on in the next few years.
Thank you very much.
And if I may, talking about the library, if we do a sales tax increase, this is an annual amount of money. It isn't just for one project. And the library requires an annual support. And the senior center requires some amount of it. Right now it's the construction costs is what, and the Theater Fest is the same way. But if we're gonna do a tax increase, it's gonna give us money per year. And if we need to have some goals, I think the library is one that fits into that very, very well.
And dovetailing on what former Mayor Richardson said, talking about CalPERS, if you read any of the news now of what's going on geopolitically around the world, everybody's 401k is going to take a big hit over the next many, many months if this thing escalates, and the price of oil, et cetera. So CalPERS, and you know, what was the projection, 6% or not? What's the CalPERS projection this right now?
It's 7%.
Yeah, that's pretty optimistic.
Yeah, right.
I don't think we're going to get close to that.
It never is.
I don't see any other comments, and I think we can move
Okay, if we
consensus on that, bring that back up again.
take a look, so what I've
Got it.
gathered is ensure fiscal sustainability and invest in infrastructure. Underneath that, sales tax increase by 1% for infrastructure, explore downtown business improvement district, and consider funding significant public projects with debt issuance.
Does that seem okay for everyone?
I like it a lot.
Looks like we're heading down that path.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we are on the subject of tourism. That was the next one that came through. So here we have comments for tourism, priorities, marketing organization, local presence, just communication about what's happening. Some more specific suggestions to look at the tourism advisory as a visitor advisory. Small convention center, defining marketing needs and developing a 2-year plan for marketing program. Once again, these are broad goals as to what you would like to achieve in terms of tourism.
I'm not sure whose this was, but the idea of accommodating business meetings in a small convention center, I think, is a terrific idea. It's one that's been discussed a few hundred times over the past years, and we've never come up with anything.
Midweek tourism. Anything we can do.
But that's the midweek stuff that would keep people in town longer. I just love that idea. I just don't know how we do it.
Same, well, because we don't have, a lot of it has to do with, excuse me for interrupting, is our proximity to an airport is the number one thing against us on that. And then obviously the size of a meeting place in Solvang. But I'm thinking outside the box, okay, what do we do with what we have to increase our midweek?
Got a comment. When I talked to the manager of the Olisol about the Olisol acquisition into the city, the property, goes down below the horse training area there, and they are talking about putting in a barn down there, if you will, and we'll put quotes around barn, that can be a convention center, a wedding location, all that, they can break it off into multiple small rooms. So that might be exactly what we're looking for. They have not made a commitment. They said that was something they were looking into. So we might need to encourage them.
Do some kind of a partnership on something like that, I think would be a great idea.
Yeah.
That would be their center.
It would be their center, but yeah, it's like, that's all you rented and get it to what you need. But
If they'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
well, that was what Kathleen told me. She said they would be willing to support city functions down. So
I think that should definitely be explored.
I think so.
Any sort of tax breaks or whatever we could possibly do to get that, because the money that comes back to us will be multiplied.
Just put it inside the city limits.
It is, yeah.
And provide water and wastewater, and we could deal with that one.
Well, this also takes me to, if you're gonna focus in having all these amenities for people to have their meetings and midweek events and everything, we need to make sure that whoever is doing our marketing is out there pitching it out to companies and corporations about, hey, we have this great venue for all of these things. So,
It's something we'd want to talk to Visit San Ynez Valley about.
I think you can have both, obviously. I mean, I would think that some Visit SYV would be interested on it because more midweek stays is more TOT for them, and that is their point. But also, whoever is doing our Solvang marketing can also pitch that into.
I agree completely.
Yeah, because also I would think that Visit SYV would maybe focus on bigger hotels such as the Cork and the Marriott, but I think somebody that is more focused in Solvang specific marketing will be more familiar where this is where you can do lunches, or this is where you can accommodate particular type of events.
I understand. I agree.
Are we limited to what we can do with the Vets Hall? Because it's somewhat of a historical building.
The primary use of the Vets Hall is that the veterans have a right
Correct.
to it.
Not discounting that, but just like an addition on the north side where it's not facing Mission Drive, something's, another wing similar to the Legion wing that we have now in the space that's there to give us a little bit more room.
Well, we'll just push out the senior center, we'll do it there.
No, because they're.
Take away the parking.
You're on tape.
Yeah.
There's parking space that's city owned.
Play that.
I mean,
I'd stick with the LSL.
And that, back in 2016, that was kind of what I talked about when I was running, is that would be an ideal location if you could somehow keep and honor the veterans, but use that location for that combination of visitor center. And we talked about getting University of Copenhagen and Lego and Carlsberg beer and Cal Poly involved and make it the state of the art. And I even talked to Maren Peterson about it. It was a great idea, but it's a third rail. So nobody's touching anything over there.
It's difficult for who owns the property, because part of that's Santa Barbara County.
Exactly, same with the library, trying to expand the library. It's county, it's courts, it's city.
Yep.
You can't make a project more difficult than at that property.
No, you couldn't.
And it's emotional. Throw that in the mix too, yeah.
Well, particularly after Solvang 2.0.
As I recall, I think you're right.
Sorry.
Okay, so if we could pull up what I have so far, got goal number 5, support and diversify tourism, increase midweek visitor stay, encourage private development of a small convention center, solving focused marketing.
I'm good with that.
I'm good.
Is everybody okay with this? Any changes?
Oh, we gotta open it up.
not for now, but I know I'm gonna open up the can of worms, because while I don't disagree with encouraging private development of that, I think that's getting back to what was Solvang 2.0. And, I mean, maybe that's just me, but for me, I would rather see something, again, where Councilmember Clark was talking about, they talked about it in 2016, you said. But, we don't have to include the courts necessarily in something that we do at the Vets Hall. It could just be possibly a partnership in with the county to make the Vets Hall a better venue for both of us. And so then it's a shared cost as opposed to something that is just all on us. And it's the county and us are representing our residents, whether they're in the county or the city, as opposed to someone that's private that is out for profit. And maybe that's just me and my thinking and being naive about it, but I personally don't like that part of private development that way.
And I have zero problem with you exploring that, or that being explored, or that being an issue. You look at everything.
Yeah, I just don't want to throw that out, toss it aside right now. I think it could be something that might be agreeable with the county in trying to expand the Vets Hall to make it a better venue without changing anything on the side that is most visible and still honoring our veterans. Because honestly, I think they need a better place where they're at than where they're kind of relegated to make it a better venue for them. And I think they should be brought into that, because it was, that was the whole purpose of the Veterans Memorial Building, and having the VFW Hall.
I had no idea that the physical structure was as important as it was, and that's my naivete.
Right. Yeah.
And I would like to talk to the Jeff McKeons and the Bruce Porters, et cetera, and get their take on that kind of thing. I know Bruce has been very vocal about it.
Right.
And so have several others. And what you could put the nicest memorial or monument out front. What would be appropriate? What would be a give and take? And I'm not saying at all tear this thing down. I'm just saying, as with everything, explore every possibility and get as much input as you possibly can.
I would also consider that in that area, you have the Betts Hall, and then you have the upcoming development of the senior center, and then you have the library that also has its own needs. If you enhance all of these facilities, you effectively have a convention center. Is it gonna be available all at the same time for big things every weekend? No. But in the event that you need to accommodate a large capacity, then you have the infrastructure and the possibility of a collaboration among all of these organizations, without having to develop one single project and having somebody to fund it. And ultimately, it's for the benefit of everybody. These are organizations that work with our community. So by supporting them, you're also supporting your community as a whole. You're making more assets available to everybody. So rather than private development, I think we should look at how can we make our assets better, how can we help these organizations, and in turn, you also have these facilities available should you need them.
There's some money out there, I believe, for working in partnerships, but I think that might be the better partnerships as opposed to a private development, because the facilities are already there, taking up a footprint, and maybe the library part gets expanded to a 2-story or something like that, and it could be added on a whole lot differently than the way it looks now, because it really kind of looks piecemeal, the way the library and that section is. It looks more of a 50s development as opposed to something that really enhances the look of the Veterans Memorial Building. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, really, pull this back up.
I think, Brenda, you had something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to I like the idea of the Veterans Hall and expanding without changing the meat of what the Veterans Hall is like. I'd like to suggest several things. One is that the Vets Hall itself, the major building that's the prettiest of the place, and has the historical integrity, it seats approximately, as you probably know, 250 people. And I'd like to suggest we could bring in small conventions, for example, the DMA West, which is the organization for the 12 Western states for tourism. And each year they have 2 conventions. They have approximately 250 people. The thing they need are additional rooms where you can have breakout sessions. I'd like to suggest that the kitchen area, I think it probably has a name, which I don't recall at this moment. That part is not very historical. It's not very pretty. It could be enhanced and maybe even expanded a little bit without giving up a lot of parking space. And then you could have those dividers where at least you could have maybe a minimum of 3 breakout areas. And as I'm sure you know, there's about 750 hotel rooms in Solvang. So there's plenty of hotel rooms for a convention of that size. And also several of those hotels, the Landsby, I believe Royal Copenhagen, the Vinland, and I'm sure there's several others, also have small meeting rooms. So if an organization came that needed more than 3 breakout sessions, they could, since Solvang's so small, they could have breakout sessions in those additional hotels. But I do very much like the look of the Veterans Memorial Building, and I definitely would not like to see it destroyed, but I think it could be made more beautiful doing some of the things that were mentioned already. Thank you. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Brenda, the senior center is going to have extra space. It's going to have room for breakout rooms.
So supporting diversified tourism while supporting and honoring local organizations serving our community. Increase midweek visitor stay, encourage private development or partnering with County of Santa Barbara for development of a small convention center while honoring and improving facilities for the veterans, include library needs. proactively seek out small conventions to be held in Solving. I don't know if you want to include that. Solving focused marketing.
Any other comments? I think that looks good. And I think that's the key is we're not trying to be the Long Beach Convention Center or anything. It's, that we're still solving, we're still trying to maintain our integrity as a city.
I just went there for an anime convention.
But it's big, yeah. But, that's, as a small convention, those are the needs that I think that has been addressed here for quite some time, so.
And of course, anything that has to do with the Veterans Hall, we're going to be coordinating with
Yes.
the veterans.
Of course, yes.
Collaboration.
We wouldn't be sitting here if we hadn't done that last time.
Absolutely.
Get all our military guys come and attack us.
Okay, next subject was law enforcement. There was some suggestions that came about for law enforcement and public safety, and those are primarily focused on working with neighboring jurisdictions, so Buellton and Chumash, to explore alternative options to provide police or law enforcement services.
Yeah, I know that in my past assignment, I've had some discussion with the lieutenant who was also the chief for Solving in Buellton and trying to come up with some way to be able to have a partnership with Buellton to share the cost. We're not that far away. We're literally within 4 miles of, our two furthest from their west boundary and our east boundary. We're, I think, 4 miles or less apart. And to be able to share the patrol services and their traffic, their motor officer, we can possibly form our own district, similar to the way that the sheriff's department allocates the county areas right now for services, and it should reduce our costs significantly for law enforcement, and by still keeping up this almost the same coverage. And the reason I say that is because how many times do most everyone, and I remember even when it was Mayor Richardson made a comment one time, what's the Solvang car doing in Buellton, way back when. And that's mainly because as law enforcement officers, you're there to back up your partner, whether you're in the city or not. That kind of becomes irrelevant when you have an issue going on somewhere in Buellton, somewhere in Solvang, or somewhere in Los Olivos or out in San Ynez. Everyone's going to go to that call if there's a need for backup. And we're not going to wait for someone from Santa Maria or Santa Barbara and Goleta to respond. We're going to all respond hands-on, and it's how we can keep each other safe as well as take care of the community better. So with that said, we may not need to have all of the coverage that is out there in the county. We might be able to do it a little bit differently, possibly even with the Chumash, although I know that they're still in the old contract, which is why their costs are so much less than each of us as the cities. So, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I think we should explore it. I know Mr. Homberger talked about that at the last council meeting, but it is something that I've been looking at for a while, and possibly just, again, being able to maybe expand our services in some ways. May not be where we see a deputy here every minute, but it would be shared with Buellton here, and we could have a motor that could go back and forth between Buellton and here and take care of some of the traffic needs that we have. And because when you look at the cost to add another deputy in the overtime, it's not in the millions. We're talking, 100,000 or something, like a couple $100,000, I believe. And so you can pick and choose on that menu the way they have it set up. But I think it's something that should be looked at little bit more strongly, especially with Buellton as a partner. I know that they have expressed that interest in the past, and
Well,
just put it out there.
You know, the reality is that this is an election year.
Yep.
And we're not exactly sure who the sheriff's gonna be, you know, come June. It'll be either the current sheriff or Lieutenant Camarena who's running against him. So I would say, you know, from this standpoint, it's probably best for us to let this slide until after that election, so we know who we're dealing with and in which way we could look at going.
Well, if we're gonna do that, I would hope that we would still have your counsel or your input. I understand that it's a hard time to look at it, but on the other hand, right now we have 2 council members that have been involved in law enforcement. So if we were gonna look at this, your input is very valuable. So I'm just very sorry about the timing about this.
He just wants to get out of it. We'll call him.
No,
Yeah.
I just think the reality is that, let's let this election go through and get done, and then let's deal with the sheriff that we'll have for the following 4 years.
Do you think that's because we don't know if whoever the next sheriff is, if he's gonna reduce our rates, or if they're gonna raise our rates?
Well, the sheriff we have is increasing our rates substantially.
So that's.
And I'm not sure that would be the case with the new sheriff or not. I've not had that conversation, should he prevail, and I'm trying to stay away from.
Understood.
From my position here and that. I get involved in that personally, but not through the city. So, but I do think there's going to be an opportunity for conversation and perhaps some compromise as soon as that election's over with and we're dealing with the sheriff that's in the house.
The questions that come to my mind about forming our own police force are, how many people? Are they city employees? How do we take care of all the vehicles?
Can't afford it.
We
Cannot
that's
afford it.
not the way. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm just
How would it work?
It still would be working.
Police district, right?
Well, that was one of the thoughts here. That's not what I had thought, but
Oh, okay.
because you're back to all of the other costs that go along with that, and the
Right.
pensions and everything else.
Sure.
So you're just trying to form a different way to partner with them, and
Still under the sheriff's department?
still with the sheriff's department.
Oh, okay.
Still with the sheriff. It's not our own separate.
The best thing about a contract is that you're guaranteed a level of service, and of course
Right.
you can determine what that level of service is going to be and what you want to pay for it. Once you form your own department, you have 1 or 2 people go out on an injury, you don't have anybody to replace them.
Right.
And I mean, it's a serious thing. That's why you see so many of the small cities in California going into contracts now with, with the sheriff's offices. So
Yeah.
That's what I did.
I just hang tight for a little bit on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also.
And it's a June election, not a November
Yeah.
election.
I know.
Yeah.
That's because there's nobody else running, right?
But to help with some of the residents that are curious or whatever, just to know what the cost is would be interesting to know, just so, to have a benchmark.
Mm.
So I wouldn't mind doing that.
Well, I think we have that, do we not? Or is that still in
The
negotiations?
The cost of the sheriff's department services?
No, we know what that is, but
Or-
the cost, if a city of this size wanted to have their own police department, what would it cost?
Right.
Oh,
It would be a work effort to develop one specific to here. We could.
Don't
No.
buy no more consultants, I vote no. I don't like spending money on consultants.
We could
I know
look
they're
at
important.
the similar sized city and just see what their budget is.
That's all I wanna know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the trends throughout the state is not to have your own department.
I know it's very cost prohibitive.
It's more through
it is.
And I have no
combining
problem with it.
agencies. That doesn't mean that we couldn't discuss something between Buellton and perhaps Junash and so forth, but
And if there is a new
That's
sheriff in
another
Santa
option.
Barbara County, lobby that person to help us out. Okay, next.
Okay, so if we would pull this up, I'm not sure we have a goal here or not.
I think we're holding off until we
Holding off
know
on this
who we're
one?
working
Okay.
with in June.
Yeah.
We're gonna do
That's great, because we're already up to 6, so eliminating 1 is wonderful. Okay, I'll make a note. Okay, let's go to the next subject matter.
If I may, Zena, there are several of these yet to go, and we're assuming that all of them are goals that we want to achieve. Is that what your thinking is, or do we want to say, nope, forget that one, go to the next one?
You are absolutely free to say nope, forget, and go to the next one.
Because now we get into grant funding and service levels and.
Skip. And housing, I think we kind of addressed. We've touched on the housing.
We touched on it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't see that as being a two-year goal, that's a longer goal, and that's part of the general plan, planning work that's going on. You had already asked the question about grant funding and getting grants in.
Yeah.
I mean, aren't these, a lot of these don't we review yearly, so.
Yeah, we get even more often than that, you know.
I think the ones that we have already gone through, I think are satisfactory.
I don't see anything else in here that really.
I think the one that we have labeled 5 on this, there's no page number, so it's the investment in infrastructure.
I agree with that.
Benefiting enjoyment of solving. That might be, to me, the only one left,
Yeah.
as far as a goal.
I agree with that.
So consider discussion on investment in infrastructure benefiting enjoyment of solving for residents and businesses.
Well, I kind of almost feel like that, in addition to the grant funding investment in community services, might be what, at least I'm feeling, we could all benefit from with a tax increase.
Right.
As far as,
Or the business improvement district.
yeah,
So business improvement district is for the beautification of downtown and.
Everything's melded into one thing.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's how I'm seeing it right now.
So maybe go back to that goal of fiscal sustainability and add some discussion to benefit the core downtown.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, because if you're having a business improvement district, well, then what are you having it for? You're having it to make.
The only thing my concern about that comment is the term downtown. We have a lot of businesses in this town, and I don't want to exclude our support for any of them.
So maybe by downtown, we mean the TRC, we don't mean just Copenhagen Drive?
No, we don't mean just Copenhagen, absolutely not.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of
TRC
discussion
and-
on that and.
And we could put it as it's a business improvement district. We could just call it for all businesses.
Well, I think that's something that the chamber is still looking at. I think maybe it would be beneficial at this point still to hold off, and as they're having that discussion as business owners, they're gonna be the driving wheel as far as that goes anyway, because whether we vote on it or not, don't they have to be a part of that if it's handled similarly to like the T-bid that we have now for tourism?
So downtown business district would be formed by council, but there is a protest that the impacted businesses or parcels could put forth. So that would be a notice going out to them,
Yeah,
and they will be involved in that process.
Makes sense.
yeah.
Because we're gonna charge all of them, or there's gonna be a charge associated with all of their sales. And so they should all have a voice in it.
Agreed.
Okay, so no change at this point to goal 4? Hold off on what's in the parentheses?
I think with goal 4, the exploring the D-bid, until maybe further discussion with Chamber, because sounds like, according to Tracy, they are meeting
Correct.
to discuss that exact same thing.
Correct. So with these goals, just to get back to the process, you're setting as high policy goals, then we'll work internally and with other organizations to come up with some solutions and strategies for the next financial plan, come back to you with preliminary financial plan. But if you want something to be, something that we strive for, you should probably include it in the language of your goal. And it doesn't have to be
Do we
all
wanna-
inclusive.
Well, I guess we already said, consider funding the significant public projects. Well, I was thinking even if we did that, not necessarily with debt issuance, but with the 1% tax increase. It's because some of that is our infrastructure, the significant public projects.
Correct. I mean, I think that's broad and it captures and provides tools for a lot of the goals that you have set today.
Okay.
And I think the Explore Downtown Business Improvement District does speak for itself, that it would be for the benefit of that district. So it's probably not necessary for you to say that it's for downtown beautification, and those could be the more detailed conversations that we have as part of the preliminary plan and the final budget development.
So it's explore the business improvement district, not just downtown necessarily.
Okay.
For all businesses. Okay.
I'm good with it.
And I just, well, to my knowledge, there's no reason why we can't add to this as time goes by and things change, right?
No,
This
this
is just what we're establishing right now as our primary goals.
Correct.
I for one, am good with what we have.
Great, that's plenty. Wonderful. Well, that brings us to the end of our goal setting here. Thank you, council. Thank you, everybody, for your input, and we'll come back to you with a preliminary plan in May, and we'll continue to have discussions in between that.
I'd like to also thank all of you folks out there for coming in and being a part of our workshop. Thank you for your input. It's very much appreciated. Continue to input and fill out those surveys. We want 3,165 registered voters, surveys to have to review.
I can't believe the percentage of voter turnout that we have in this town.
That's really good.
It's
Well,
like 2%.
if you remember, there was Mr., well, the one.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot, oh, yeah.
I forgot.
No, there was a lot of, yeah.
All right, I will officially adjourn the meeting at 12:27. Thank you again.